Audiobook Club with Steve Phillips and Matthew Layton.
On this week's Audiobook Club, we travel back in time to 1980 to learn more about the infamous siege at the Iranian Embassy in London.
We've got about a minute now.
Gullen told Rose by radio.
And then we're going.
The order
Hyde Park.
crackled through the SAS earpieces. Groups in position, explosives primed, abseilers hitched and ready.
London Bridge.
Barked Gullen.
Go, go, go.
Morell and Palmer pushed off the rear parapet and began to descend, the abseil ropes fizzing softly through the figure-of-8 devices. The first pair reached the second floor. Then Tommy Palmer's foot went through a window. At 7:23 p.m, the building was rocked by an enormous explosion.
They're shooting back.
Hello and welcome to Audiobook Club, the audiobook review and recommendation podcast that can often be found dangling from a rope outside buildings in London's glittering Knightsbridge. This week, we shall be mounting an incursion into the audio pages of historian Ben MacIntyre's latest offering, The Siege, the remarkable story of the greatest SAS hostage drama. Daring to join me in this winning endeavour is as ever Matt Layton. Hey, Matt.
Hello, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. So it's our second Ben MacIntyre.
It is, and he's covered the siege of the Iranian Embassy in London in 1980. What do you remember? What do you associate with the siege? Ben MacIntyre aligns it with like 9/11 and the assassination of Kennedy as one of those events where everyone remembers where they were. I'd argue it's in the B league of that. What do you think?
It's only afterwards you learn how significant it was, and you know, memories of being 4, 5 years old when this happened is, well, obviously at the time it was just, you know, I probably didn't have it on TV, but since then you grow up sort of seeing the explosion out of the window, and that's and SAS units going in. But then then afterwards you learn this was the first instance of rolling news. You know, this was broadcast live to people's homes, but the people inside weren't necessarily aware that was happening.
Yeah, I mean, I was 6 years old and 5 days when this siege took place. And again, like you know, retrospectively during childhood, because we had the BBC in this country and we had tellies in our living rooms at the time, there's that image of, and again, I associate as a still image of some bloke stuck hanging from a rope as an explosion goes off. I'll put the image in I refer the honourable gentleman to this week's script where I've put a picture of that instant, which is indeed the I guess the zenith of this book, the crescendo of this book, where there's a bloke who's stuck hanging from a rope, dressed all in black, hanging off what is clearly, a building from. If you've been to the posh parts of London, you know that's where it is. It's that image that's familiar to us. I never knew anything about it. You?
No, it was literally only seeing that footage. It's just a few seconds you really zone in on of that footage of the explosion and people going in, but knew nothing either side of that. But like I say, the more as you grow up and the more you learn about it, the more fascinated you are by how the operation was mounted, how they were able. It was the cunningness around it as well, which I guess we'll go into shortly. How they actually just managed to infiltrate in a very clever way the SAS.
You see, I didn't know any of that, and I've done a week's crash course, and I've listened to the book a couple of times, and the version that's on the BBC. So I know that apparently it has to do with the Iranian Revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei taking over and making the country less lavish and Farsi and more Muslim and Arabic, and the people who are... You see, I'm not confident enough, but I've read it, and it's much more complicated than that, and what's behind it. But of course, Ben MacIntyre does the job he does of drilling right down into the individuals involved. We really enjoyed his Colditz book, didn't we?
Oh, we did. Well, he made characters of these real cinematic characters of these people.
Yeah, and he does that in this book for not only the people who are inside the siege, or indeed the bit which is clearly his linchpin, having written about the SAS before, and I think we know that he spent a lot of time at the SAS museum and has very strong contacts with them. It's kind of but there were also police involved, and there were. He also takes a step back and looks at some of the political repercussions and also the cultural background at the time. So let's do our usual three-part thing. We'll start with the author. We shall then discuss the text of the book, the content, and then we'll move on to whether the audiobook adds any value. So the author, Ben MacIntyre. Benedict Richard Pierce MacIntyre was born on the 25th of December 1963. He's a British author, historian, reviewer and columnist for the Times newspaper, but he is best known to us as the man who takes historical events and weaves them into engaging stories. Oh, you can tell I wrote this, can't you? It's rather good. A number of which have been famously adapted for screen and now stage. His book Operation Mincemeat was made into a film starring Colin Firth and has since been made into a musical. I don't know, you going to go and see that one, Steve?
Yes, I'll download the soundtrack as well. Would be great. Yeah. I just can't musicals and me. I just can't understand why a perfectly good plot is ruined by someone to burst into song about something that's happening on the stage.
I have to say I'm slightly dreading. And then we threw the corpse into the sea.
Yeah. Maybe there's an exclamation mark attached to the end of the title of the musical, because that's what you have to do, isn't it?
Mincemeat.
You have to keep no matter what the subject matter, no matter how desperate and it is, you have to keep the atmosphere, the vibe up, don't you? Really, yeah.
Back to the script, and I particularly enjoyed the BBC serialisation of his book SAS Rogue Heroes. Did you see that one?
I've not seen it, but you do mention it on occasion, and I do mention it
quite whenever we have Ben MacIntyre on. I do mention or talk about Ben MacIntyre. I do mention it. It's the whole idea of these ruffians going through the desert in camouflage jeeps, but the needle drop, the soundtrack is AC/DC as they're doing it. It was brilliant fun.
Great use of the word ruffians. We've not had that on the podcast for a long time.
No. This is the second time.
Gen Z, if you're listening, ruffians are...
Ruffians, you scallywag hoodlums. This is the...
Purses.
Look, come on, you said we'd get this down on time. This is the second time we have featured one of Ben MacIntyre's books here at Audiobook Club. Not only did we review and heartily recommend his last book, Colditz, Prisoners of the Castle, we also bagged an interview with the man himself. Links, as they say, are in the description. So next, the book. The book covers the 6-day siege of the Iranian Embassy in London that started on Wednesday the 30th of April 1980 and ended on May the 5th. Ben MacIntyre does his usual job of weaving a story out of it. I'll put down his cinematic yet personal. He zooms in and out. He zooms into individuals and gives you a really good grasp of who they are, but then gives you historical context and you know the historical vegetables. It's a 5,000-year history of the issues that have caused this to happen. So, but of course, the most important thing, I think, is how he describes the actual human interactions, and not only of the people in the embassy, but also the people. So that's the hostages and the gunmen. Also the people outside the embassy, the police, the SAS, the people making decisions in government. Inside the building, the hostages. Probably the main hostage is PC Trevor Locke. He was a policeman who was on duty outside of the embassy on the morning that the siege started and got caught in. He's described brilliantly in this clip.
Patient and placid, Locke was a far cry from The Sweeney, the popular 1970s TV show in which tough, gun-wielding cops screeched around London in fast cars, apprehending villains. He was closer to Dixon of Dock Green, another policeman familiar to British television viewers, policing with common sense by standing around on street corners, being avuncular. Some joined the police to fight crime and improve society. Locke became a policeman, as he put it, to help old ladies across the road.
So it's a really vivid portrayal of him. For the second week in a row, Steve, we've got a West Ham fan on the programme.
I know, I'm detecting a theme here. I appreciate you introducing these books with the Hammers theme going on here. And also, you don't hear the word avuncular too much either, do you?
No, I'm very happy with the oldie worldy words that we're getting.
Yeah, I'd be very happy just knowing avuncular people and no one else.
I'm not. I'm a bit too skinny to be avuncular. That's my problem.
But
it involves a certain. In my head, it involves a certain jelly-like belliness and some afternoon drinking, which I'm not allowed to do anymore.
Well, I think there's a diversity issue here with your perception of avuncularity, and I think anyone can say they're avuncular and they're proud, no matter how they look. Rights for avunculars.
I can be avuncular too.
You can be avuncular too, Matt. I'll get you a badge.
Another thing that he has in common with you. So he had his gun on him when the siege started, and he was dressed for standing outside the embassy to sort of nod at people as they walked in. But another thing he has in common with you is the ability to not go to the toilet for 6 days and to wear the same clothes for 6 days in a row.
What are you? Was I really like that back in the day when we worked together?
Well, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. We're all like that. But he doesn't go to the toilet or bathe because he's worried that his gun will be revealed and it will cause danger to him and the other hostages. And again, it reminds me of. Do you remember the character portrayal in Colditz, where we got to find out the book opens with the description of one of the prisoners trying to escape with a fake moustache made out of shaving bristles. I think did this grab you, because you were passionate about that one? Did this grab you in the same way, Steve?
Oh, completely, and it's all down to the storytelling. Everything you've outlined there, the zooming in, the zooming out, the geopolitical world events and ramifications of this siege, right down to the individual stories of the hostages involved, the gunman, Luff, the negotiator, and what happened to him. The way that the name escapes me of the police chief running the whole show, John
Dello, the senior police officer in London.
Yeah, exactly. Dealing with the minutiae of it, but also trying to bat away requests from Buckingham Palace for Prince Andrew to come and join in. Were interesting. So yes, and it just felt like It felt like it was fiction, but it actually happened.
Yeah, and again, it's interesting the way he manages to focus in on the individuals and then pull it out to a wider thing. I mean, for example, we find out what's going on with PC Trevor Locke's wife, who sneaks out past the press and the police to go to church at one point. And you know, it's the things that we don't think of, the bits that Ben MacIntyre picks up on again, like, you know, the whole idea that, of course, what we don't think of is the 100 catering staff who were employed to feed the police and support and firemen and ambulance drivers over the 6 days of the siege as well. So, and of course, then it goes up to a global level where, of course, Margaret Thatcher makes cameos. And you're almost casting Margaret Thatcher in your head, aren't you? You're sort of going, oh, who would, you know, you could see her walking in and making decisions. And William Whitelaw was the Home Secretary. I remember him, and Douglas Hurd was the Foreign Secretary. I remember Douglas Hurd.
Yeah,
I know the name William Whitelaw, but not the person or anything about him. But again, you're almost casting these people in your head because of the beautiful way Ben MacIntyre writes.
It's all the stories around the main story, that image that we've spoken about with links in the show notes and so on. But it's all the stories that are connected, like you've mentioned, like Trevor Locke's wife, like the story of Margaret Thatcher being coming out of an interview and seeing and being told about this siege and saying, yes, the government haven't really done anything, because she didn't know the siege was actually happening in the UK, in London. She thought it was a different siege elsewhere.
She thought it was the American Embassy siege in Iran, so the opposite way around. Yeah, funnily enough, she'd been on with Jimmy Young.
Oh, Jimmy Young.
Good.
Unforgettable thing.
But again, as much as the story is brilliantly told, you just get the feeling that you are reading a proper old-fashioned book where an academic, Ben MacIntyre, has gone to a library and read lots of stuff. And again, I think you kind of grabbed onto the fact that the Colditz book was mainly based on the diaries of the prison commandant. And I'm just looking around doing that type of thing, that kind of forensic look at it that you were doing, going, where has all this material come from? And the answer is, he mentions briefly, and you blink and you miss it, that the policeman in charge of the Operation John Dello, in a very disciplined way, kept a diary all the way through the siege. And I just went ding, 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 ding. At that point, I went, he's writing from diaries again, is he? And then, fortunately, there's a veteran female war reporter, Dame Rebecca West, who lives with a balcony overlooking the embassy itself. And he keeps mentioning how she refused to leave her flat and was very gung-ho. But then, of course, oh yeah, she must have been writing stuff as well. And I think he references something that he writes. And then the one that fascinated me was the psychologist, which Professor John Gunn, which I thought, you know, most historical events, you don't get a psychologist in situ whose job it was not only to go, what are the hostages? Not only to go, what are the gunmen, as Ben MacIntyre calls them, doing, but also what's the effect on the hostages, and what's the effect on the people who in the police who are running the operation or negotiating. And indeed, as you mentioned, the first negotiator goes nuts and has to be dismissed, and they have to bring someone else in. So to have I'm getting the impression that a lot of the research in this, or part of the spine of Ben MacIntyre's work, is the work of Professor John Gunn, was his name. But yeah, that's part of the point, isn't it, Steve? It's like, when we think of history, we think of, yes, World War II, or in this case, 1066, the Battle of Hastings. But the idea that now something that was happening when we're alive is now history, but also the story is told with historical rigor. But the idea that we're getting the opinion of the psychologist and mentions of what was on the telly is really, I don't know. My head's still spinning a little bit. It's like, it's history, but I vaguely remember it, and I've learned a lot more about, as I say, an image that is part of my DNA. In terms of the big news stories of my youth.
I don't know if you felt the same way as I did listening to the book. Was that although it's told in the past tense, it feels very current, contemporary, like it's actually happening as you're listening. And it reminds me a little bit of there was a podcast or a radio series that was done a few years ago called Tunnel 29, and I'd never forget this thing. It's still on BBC Sounds if you want to go and have a listen to it. But it's a story of an East German who escapes from East Germany by digging a tunnel. And then he goes back into East Germany to rescue 30-odd friends and family. And it's all done in real time. This had the same feel about it.
The idea that history has cars in it. The idea that if you want to go and see the buildings that are mentioned in this one, you can actually, they still look the same. They are still there. The Albert Hall comes into it. The notion that there's, television and cars exist in the context of something here. So I'm slightly unbalanced by it all, but it feels really exciting that I've lived through part of history, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? We missed a trick. We should have done this as an outside, not an outside broadcast, but we should have stood there recorded at Prince's Gate, shouldn't we?
Yeah, we could have drunk in the same pub that the terrace drinking. Do you know what? Funnily enough, I was listening to it, and one of the streets that's mentioned, there's another siege that happened in the 1970s in London, and it's mentioned in the book. Some IRA sympathisers in a pub in Balcombe Street near Regent's Park, and that's the pub where you and I were when we saw Lionel Blair.
No.
Yeah.
You see how things come around, don't they?
So there is mention in this book of a pub where you and I sat outside and saw Lionel Blair.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? It makes it really does bring it home to you, doesn't it? Really.
Yeah, no, I feel that this is exactly what I thought would happen. I'm sitting here going, this is an amazing historical novel with so much research and work, and you and I are talking about when we saw Lionel Blair outside a pub.
Lionel Blair.
Oh,
give
God.
us a clue.
So that's embarrassing, but that does bring us on to Ben MacIntyre as narrator. What's the audiobook club feeling when we see the author as narrating, Steve, in 9 out of 10 cases?
9 out of 10 cases. Well, I don't know. I think opinion is slightly divided. I think generally I agree with you.
Well, you've got to say what it is before you agree with me.
I'm trying to remember what it was.
The idea is that when we see one of those stickers across an Audible title that says "read by the author," this to us is not always a selling point, and how we've seen authors go into studios on Instagram and take a little picture of a cup of tea and one of those music stands with the copy of their book on it, go, I've gone in to do my audiobook.
Wish me luck.
Wish me luck. Looking forward to it. And then you don't hear from them for the next 10 days as they realise that reading something off a piece of paper is actually really quite difficult, even if it's yours. However, Ben MacIntyre, he's just so right for this.
He's next level, isn't he?
He it's what you would want your second generation historical scholar who's telling you these things to sound like. But there's also his light touch. I think if anybody else had read this book, they wouldn't have had the enthusiasm for the material. A voice on a stick, as they're sometimes called, a voiceover artist who walked into the studio, was paid to read the book, would not have the knowledge, passion, enthusiasm to the source material and to the writing. And he's great at doing the light touch bits that he does.
Yeah.
You know what, Steve? I told you that. I promised you this last week. I'm going to play it to you now. The book, of course, does feature a little bit of the snooker.
From his hospital bed, Mustafa Karkuti watched the television footage of the body being removed from the front step of the embassy and immediately knew whose body that was because of the bright yellow colour of his cardigan. Fatton clung to him. In the Crucible Theatre, the snooker final was on a knife edge. Hurricane Higgins was hanging in grimly and levelled the match 3 times. The contest was tense and fractious, with both players showing signs of mental weariness. Cliff Thorburn moved ahead, but then Higgins fought back, and the scores drew level again at 16 frames apiece. In the 33rd frame, Thorburn cleared the table with a break of 119, in what the Times called a masterly display of concentration, accuracy and staying power.
He's made snooker into a history of conflict.
Well,
How cool is that?
Not only are you reliving this major historical event, but you're also reliving this other major historical event of the 1981 Embassy World Championship final between Hurricane and Cliff Thorburn. And Cliff Thorburn, what a moustache that man had. It's quite just a beauty, real beauty. And he just took ages. He took ages to play snooker.
I don't think an off-the-shelf voiceover artist would have read that with the same enthusiasm. There's a sense of fun in that bit. He's able to give us a break, both in terms of the text, but also a bit of light entertainment, a bit of light relief. I quite like it.
He does. He hits all the notes. There is the light entertainment, the light relief that you would need in this sort of situation, but he hits you hard when he needs to. The other thing, it feels like you can draw parallels here with, like a historical program, a history show presented by Simon Sharma, for example. He's done all the work, he's done the research and all the rest of it, and so he would be naturally the right person to present it. Andrew Marr doing the history of modern Britain. We've spoken about that book before. The same thing there as well. He wrote it. He wrote the book. He wrote the TV series. So naturally, he would present it. If it was done by someone else, it wouldn't work quite as well because they have not just that you take away a layer by bringing in another narrator just to read the words. Because if you felt the words, if you wrote the words, then without you doing anything else, it just brings it more alive, I think. And
it is. Fortunately, he doesn't do the accents, which is very wise. But there's also something very, again, like the text of the book itself. There is something that it reminds you of the academic, the historian who's done the research, but also there's something slick about it as well, which makes it very modern. And I think those are, this is definitely a book that couldn't have been written by the people who wrote our textbooks at school. I think the way we tell history has moved on since then.
Yeah, definitely. It certainly has. Things have to be now, because of the nature of the world we live in now, people have to be satisfied or sated much quicker on a much more accessible level. If you watch BBC
Hold on. Before you say 14 hours and 27 minutes. I wasn't sated that quickly.
Well, yeah.
It changes direction and pace often, and there wasn't. Actually, there was one moment where I got a little bit bored, but that was a bit where he was feeding me my my Persian 5,000 year history. I zoned out a little bit there, but otherwise I was entirely engaged for 14 hours and 25 minutes.
Absolutely, and to get the context why the siege happened, who was involved in the siege, all of the stories around it, what an event it means. I mean, on the face of it, it was a thing that was a bit of a standoff for 6 days that involved a big explosion at the end and people coming out. You know, I don't want to sort of get into too many details here because I might have missed this bit in the book. Actually, I might actually know. But when we're talking about Trevor Locke not having gone to the toilet for 6 days, some things nature does have a way of forcing the issue on you. How did he do anything? He must have done something. He must have come out smelling a little bit, must he? Maybe?
Again, 2 years of fastidious research, a brilliant writing style that can be both suggest intellectual rigour and be light of touch. And you and I are sitting here talking about toilet humour again.
Welcome to the smuttiest audiobook review podcast, as noted last week. We carry on.
All right, wind her up, Steve.
You have been listening to The Siege, the remarkable story of the greatest SAS hostage drama, written and narrated by Ben MacIntyre. Comes in at 14 hours and 27 minutes. It was only out on the 12th of September, so hot off the audio presses, published by Penguin Audio. And again, another major thumbs up from us, and thank you, Ben, for doing it again. And just a quick reminder, as Matt pointed out earlier on, Matt spoke to Ben MacIntyre, so if you want to hear his interview, just follow the links in the show notes, and yeah, hopefully we'll get to speak to him again and look forward to his next work, because he really does. I wonder what he's doing. I wonder if there's any hints about what he's going to cover next. I'm really that'd be good to hear. That'd be very good to hear. What disaster? What disaster do you want to hear about?
Well, I think that there are two that are popping into my head, and again, iconic news images of my childhood. If he's going for the next one, and again, this is such a jump from Colditz, I'm probably getting it wrong, but there certainly seem to be some allusions to 9/11 in this book, and also the other image in my head from my childhood, from the news, is the Lockerbie plane bombing. The view of that half a Pan Am cockpit blown apart and lying in the Scottish countryside. So if I were a betting man, and I'm not, I would put a $5 on each of those as his.
I was going to say Lockerbie as well, and you're right. Actually, it's just get those gaps from your childhood filled in, as it were, with the context and everything around the characters.
Dear sir,
yes,
my colleague Mr. Phillips and I request that you spend the next 2.5 years filling in gaps from our childhood.
And if he wants to do maybe a novella or something shorter, it was a time. This is an abiding image. I think it's from 1983, but it was the lifting of the Mary Rose in Portsmouth, the Henry VIII's Pride and Joy, the lifting of the Mary Rose in Portsmouth, and that yellow cradle that they got the Mary Rose inside, and they were just lifting it out, and a safety pin broke, and you heard this almighty clang, and just thought, "Wow, that's a massive disaster." That, but then it was all fine. So. It won't be such a heavily researched book.
Well, there's no point there, is there, really? Because you just spoilt the end of it. But never mind.
Well, it is history, so...
Can you spoil history? You and I, can.
No spoilers for history. Exactly. There we go. So
positively ruined it.
I have. I'm sorry about the spoilers on the Mary Rose. But that was Ben MacIntyre. Next week, we're going to change tack slightly, if you will indulge us. Because we've been having a bit of a chat, haven't we, Matt, about our favourite book of all time. And that's what we'll do. It's an indulgence. It's an indulgement. Indulging? Yeah, it really should be
Indulgence.
a wordsmith, really. Yeah, indulgent. Thank you. Yeah, not so good for an audiobook club. But our favourite book, and we hope you like them. You're still having a think about what your favourite book of all time is, Matt.
I'm really struggling, I have to say, but I'll get something.
So my favourite book, my favourite audiobook, actually, thus far, has been the biography of Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. And you've not heard that, have you?
I haven't heard that. I had a taxi driver the other day who said to me, and he was a Muslim by faith, and he said to me, "You know what the problem is these days? Steve Jobs has touched more people's lives than the Prophet Muhammad did."
Wow.
I thought, yeah, you think about that. What is it? So it's 1,500 years since the life of the Prophet Muhammad, and what the population was at the time, and the percentage of the world, even though it's a religion of conversion. But in the last 30 years, there are X billion iPads, iPhones, iPods on Earth. It's quite an interesting thought. So it's significant.
I can introduce a sound effect here, Matt, on just how long the book actually is by introducing the paper version. This is how long the audiobook is.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. Yeah. There might not be time for anything that I've got. Hold on. I'm just going to have a quick look through my library on my phone.
Yeah.
And no, I can't make a decision. That's just too much pressure, Steve.
Sorry, it was either that sitting next to it is Lord of the Rings, and let's face it, we haven't really got time. We're on Instagram, Audiobook Show, where we're starting to get some conversations going there. So if you'd like to come and have your thoughts and your say on both Ben MacIntyre's The Siege, any of the books we've reviewed recently, and also let us know what your favourite book of all time is, audio version that is. We'd love to hear from you too. So it'll be Steve Jobs next week and by Walter Isaacson, and then we'll return to the new releases once Matt's had a think about what his favourite one is. Matt?
I can't. I'm still doing it.
Okay.
No,
we'll give you a few more minutes. Until then,
Horowitz, no. CS,
no, still going.
Sorry,
okay,
no,
yeah.
Can't do it.
No, still going.
Hold on. Here it is. You know what? I would like to have a listen to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in some way, shape, or form. How about that? I remember the book. I read it in as a kid, and the potential for... I never liked watching it on telly because it never matched my imagination. I should imagine an audiobook version leaves me room to make my own Narnia.
If we're going down that road, as we're approaching Christmas, of course, maybe The Box of Delights by John Masefield as well, because that was another big one from childhood. Patrick Troughton was in that. And Robert Stevens, of course, has been in the news recently following the sad passing of Maggie Smith. Prime Miss Jean Brodie and everything. He was in that too, the TV version of it. And at the time, it was a massive, big budget BBC kind of drama, but still shot on videotape. But I imagine the Narnia of your mind will really go to town.
In the Narnia in my mind. Yes.
Yes, the Narnia
like a
of your
square
mind.
Within a circle, like a wheel within a wheel.
Well, as we leave Matt recounting and singing the greatest hits of the time there, we'll see you next week. Cheers, Matt.
Thank you, Steve.
Ta-da.